promoting a healthy environment. It's the air we breathe. Clean, safe water. Responsible management of our natural resources. We protect and restore for a sustainable future. Environment matters.
You look at these dilapidated buildings and the space that they're in and think that could be a walking trail.
A program from the US EPA and the Appalachian Regional Commission is targeting 2 local communities to help revitalize neighborhoods, strengthen the local economy, and promote healthier lifestyles. Plus,
just really shows what you can do with a river if you give it some attention.
It's easy to see why the Little Coal River has become such a popular destination for paddlers and anglers alike. But what's harder to see is how that was done. And that's the idea. Hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of Environment Matters. I'm Greg Adolphson. 40 years ago, President Jimmy Carter signed the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act, which established regulations at the federal level to protect communities and the environment from the adverse effects of surface coal mining. SMCRA, as it's known for short, also provided states and tribes with funding mechanisms to address hazards and environmental impacts from mines abandoned prior to the Act's passage in 1977. The DEP's Jake Glantz joins us now with a look at some of the program's successes here in West Virginia and at the work still to be done.
Greg, over the last 4 decades, just over $1 billion has been spent in West Virginia alone to address the safety hazards and environmental damage caused by more than a century of pre-law mining. Coal was first referenced in what is now West Virginia in 1742, when explorers reported seeing an outcrop along a tributary of the Kanawha River. It would take another 100 years or so before the demand for coal would bring mining at an industrial scale to West Virginia. First in the northern part of the state along the Pittsburgh seam, and then in the south, as rail lines necessary to haul the coal to market were extended and encouraged development there. Large-scale surface mining in the state began in the early 20th century.
SMCRA was enacted August 3, 1977, and prior to that, the coal mining that occurred in West Virginia happened with little to no requirements for reclamation. So SMCRA required coal operators to acquire permits and then meet a stricter reclamation responsibility. But what SMCRA also did was provide the state with funds to go back and then reclaim mine sites that coal operators were allowed to walk away from.
And after 40 years of work, in West Virginia that includes more than 4,800 different sites with a $4.5 billion price tag, that still needs to be addressed.
Of the $4.5 billion on our inventory, only $1.5 billion is approved by the Office of Surface Mining. $2 billion worth of work was removed by OSM in the late 80s or early 90s, and then there's another $1 billion worth of mine fires that OSM has just told us we can't include because it would skew the numbers too much. So with the $2 billion thrown out in the late 80s, the reason for that was due to the fact that those sites were deemed too far removed from populated centers. So what's happened now, as the state has changed, people have been able to access some of these more removed sites, and so what may have been a hard to access site 20 years ago is now an easily accessible site, particularly with the development of the Hatfield-McCoy Trail system. We have numerous high walls in southern West Virginia that may have been isolated and very infrequently visited, but now today, with the number of visitors that utilize the Hatfield-McCoy Trail system, that high wall, portal, or auger hole may see upwards of 50 to 100 people a week travel by that feature.
With any reclamation project, the top priorities are the elimination of health and safety hazards.
And then a secondary benefit is the environmental improvement that is seen through the reclamation. So, for example, within the Cheat watershed, The AML program has spent a tremendous amount of time and resources abating and reclaiming physical features to keep the public safe from those hazards, the open mine portals, the vertical openings, the high walls. But in reclaiming those sites, the large and very significant secondary benefit has been the environmental improvement associated with that reclamation. So back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the Cheat Watershed and Cheat Lake were not nearly the fishery that they are today. Today, through the reclamation the AML program has done, as well as regulated mining in that area, the Cheat Watershed, including Cheat Lake, is one of the better fisheries in the state. So great success story there, and that can be attributed largely to the reclamation the AML program has done.
West Virginia receives about $25 million a year for reclamation of abandoned mine lands from a per-ton tax on mined coal.
Those fee collections are scheduled to end in 2021. Our program will receive the last disbursement of those funds in 2022. After 2022, our programs will be able to utilize what's known as the AML Trust Fund. The AML Trust Fund was established when SMACRA was created to provide funding for states and tribes to continue doing reclamation after the fee collection stopped. So as long as the AML Trust Fund isn't utilized for any other type of programs, they project that the AML program in West Virginia will continue to have funding through about 2035. However, there are a handful of bills working their way through Congress right now that would potentially utilize the AML Trust Fund for other activities besides reclamation of AML features.
Project costs range from tens of thousands of dollars to several $million, with the bulk of the money spent on construction. Those larger projects are usually done in phases, spread out over several years.
One project in particular in Tucker County, Tub Run High Wall, we've done 3 projects alone at that particular site, and we're in the process of designing a 4th project at that location. When it's all said and done, we will have spent over $10 million at that particular site. So for us to tackle that site, or a site of that magnitude, in 1 year would basically direct too much of our funds into one area and would reduce our ability to actually abate other hazards around the state. Because AML sites are dynamic, they're always changing, what might be a stable, low priority site today, after a freeze-thaw cycle or a rain event, that site may become an emergency situation or a high priority site that suddenly bumps itself to the top of our reclamation list.
The DEP's AML program also funds the construction of water lines in communities where the water source has been detrimentally impacted by pre-law mining, and actively treats roughly 100 miles of acid mine drainage and paired streams across the state of West Virginia. For Environment Matters, I'm Jake Glantz.
Thanks, Jake. Every year, the DEP's Office of Abandoned Mine Lands and Reclamation budgets $4 million to deal with emergencies like blowouts and landslides. It also puts up to 30% of its annual grant into a set-aside account. Interest earned from that account pays for treatment of acid mine drainage impacted streams. In 2017, the AML grant amounted to $23.8 million. The DEP's Office of Abandoned Mine Lands and Reclamation is considering applications for economic development projects located on or adjacent to mine sites that ceased operations prior to the 1977 signing of the Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act. A committee of representatives from the West Virginia DEP, the state's Department of Commerce, and the West Virginia Division of Highways will review the applications and announce which projects will receive grant funding. A total of $25 million is available. The grant funding is provided by the federal government and is being administered by AML. All funding must be approved by the U.S. Department of the Interior's Office of Surface Mining, Reclamation, and Enforcement. Changes in the economy and related population shifts have left many once thriving downtowns in Appalachia shadows of their former selves, filled with empty storefronts, dilapidated buildings, and inadequate services for the remaining residents. But a partnership between the U.S. EPA and the Appalachian Regional Commission is looking to change that. The DEP's Brianna Hickman has the details.
Thanks, Greg. The program is called Healthy Places for Healthy People, and it's come to the communities of Smithers and Montgomery in Fayette County to help folks there leverage healthcare facilities and resources that promote a healthier lifestyle into sustainable economic development. Downtown Montgomery is a little quieter these days now that WVU Tech shifted operations to the Beckley campus,
which is definitely very fresh and kind of raw in the citizens' minds in this area. But the silver lining is that KVC Health Systems has come in to take over some of the campus, as has YMCA of the Kanawha Valley. And those are two partnerships that I don't think anybody foresaw when Tech left. And a YMCA in this area really fits in well with this idea of trying to incorporate health and wellness into the community.
And that's the idea behind the Healthy Places for Healthy People initiative. Experts from the program will work with residents, local government officials, and partner healthcare facilities to develop plans and strategies that address long-term community needs. By focusing on healthcare providers and related businesses, as well as community-based amenities that emphasize healthy lifestyle choices, the program aims to help communities achieve a sustainable economic future.
One of the purposes of this program is to bring the federal agency partners to the conversation in the community so that we can listen to what they want to accomplish and see how our programs can better match up. So we'll be joined by other colleagues of mine from EPA, from Housing and Urban Development, from the Appalachian Regional Commission and other federal agencies, USDA, and others who will be able to hear what the vision is for this community and see how their programs might be able to help contribute to that.
And some of the initial work is already underway. The Fayette County Commission has created an inventory of dilapidated structures in the communities of Montgomery, Smithers, and Gawley Bridge.
And considering the renewed effort for community development, economic development in the area, we felt like we really need to address the dilapidated structures to facilitate businesses, families moving into the area. And so when we looked at how to turn those liabilities into assets, we wanted to make sure that we turned them into assets that really helped out the community from a health standpoint.
I can see that there are tremendous assets that are here. Incredible natural beauty, buildings that have historic quality and character, a downtown that can really be built upon, institutions that are here like the community college and the hospital and other organizations that are clearly the linchpin for this community and bringing it together. And I've just only arrived. So over the next couple of days, we'll be learning even more about the assets that Montgomery and Smithers can build on to really create a healthy, vibrant place.
The group put together an initial 2-day workshop to bring the community together to discuss livability issues and economic development ideas, and the roles health and healthcare partners can play. Ideas like transforming vacant storefronts, developing a more walkable downtown, and looking at ways to better connect towns with the surrounding rural areas.
Like many Appalachian communities that I've been fortunate to work with over the years, there are economic challenges that communities face. Loss of employers, loss of institutions to the community. These are challenges, but also opportunities. Opportunities to rethink what Montgomery and Smithers is all about and how health and economic vitality can be part of that conversation. So it is a challenge in terms of vacant buildings, blighted properties, and just broader economic challenges. But these are also opportunities that the community can seize.
So we feel like this is really a good opportunity to look at those dilapidated structures as maybe a new walking trail, maybe a new green space, maybe a fishing pier. And so that's really been our approach, and we feel like, with Montgomery's location between Charleston and Fayetteville, if we can get people to just stop and come into this community, it's got a lot going for it. We just need to kind of build on those assets.
Smithers, Montgomery, and Gawley Bridge were one of 10 communities selected to participate in the program. Fayette County will partner with Montgomery General Hospital and New River Health Association to identify how the health and wellness sector can help reinvigorate the regional economy. For Environment Matters, I'm Brianna Hickman.
Thanks, Brianna. Plans are already underway to add a fishing pier along the Kanawha River in Montgomery. The group is also looking into other areas along the riverfront for additional redevelopment opportunities. Every year, the DEP honors the groups of volunteers who make up the various watershed associations around the state, from creating programs that help monitor and sample the waters to their stream cleanup and restoration efforts to community outreach and education. These groups provide an important service to the people of West Virginia.
I think it's really important. There are eyes and ears on the ground, and there are, our local community stewards. And so when people see them, people living in their community doing these things, I think that other people are more likely to follow that and get involved and interested and, know more about their water and where their drinking water comes from and where they can recreate in their water. So I think it's very important for DEP to have these groups and to help sustain them too.
This year's winner of the Watershed of the Year, the Friends of the Hughes River Watershed Association. Hughes River is a tributary of the Little Kanawha River in Ritchie and Wirt counties. We visited the group a couple of years ago and spoke to them about what they do and why they do it.
It's a small river. Nobody outside of Ritchie County has even heard of it, but it dominates our entire county, and it's a beautiful, beautiful river, and all the little creeks along it, and we just are that contribute to make it up. And we want to see it stay clean and healthy and source for recreation and drinking water for both man and beast.
We're all concerned about quality of water. We're in an area where we're blessed with abundant water, so going out and sampling the water is our way of trying to help out to make sure that the quality of the water, not only for us but our friends who live in the water, that quality remains the way it should be.
Hopefully our monitoring will over time create a real baseline, so we'll know what the normal quality of the water is, so that when different parameters show that there is a problem or issues in a particular isolated area, we'll be able to zoom on it and try to figure out where and where it's coming from and what might be done to minimize it.
I think that we're getting out there in the public, and we're bringing awareness of the watershed to all these groups that we're talking to. And I think that the more awareness we can bring, the more people will realize it's very important to take care of your watershed.
Congratulations to the Friends of the Hughes River Watershed Association, your 2017 Watershed of the Year. The group received a check for $5,000. To find out more about the various watershed associations around the state and their work with the DEP's Watershed Improvement Branch, check out our website, dep.wv.gov, and look for the Water and Waste tab. You can also check out a listing of upcoming events on the Watershed Improvement Branch calendar, found in the Spotlight section at the bottom of our homepage. The DEP also recently honored all of the hundreds of volunteers that make up the Adopt a Highway program with a thank you picnic recently at Lakeview Resort in Morgantown. Dylan Hamilton of the Sandy Pals 4-H Club in Preston County was honored as the Adopt a Highway Volunteer of the Year. He's pictured with Adopt a Highway Director Kim Smith. Adopt a Highway is a joint program with the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection and the State Division of Highways. Every year, volunteers hold cleanups, removing tons of trash and litter from the state's roads and highways. If your group or civic organization would like to volunteer to adopt a highway, or if you'd like to find a group in your area, contact us here at the DEP. You'll also find a link to the Adopt a Highway program on our website. The Little Coal River has become a popular destination for anglers and paddlers alike, but that wasn't the case just a few years ago. The DEP's Mike Huff has more on how years of restoration work was as much an art as it was a science.
It's a late summer morning, and after a day of rain, the Little Coal is in fine shape for floating. The river today is a far cry from how it was just a few years ago.
Say 15 years ago, when I personally started working with the river and with other entities on the river, average day, we wouldn't see anybody floating it for fishing or recreation. But since that time, and the structures have gone in, it's nothing to see 10, 15 canoes, kayaks, inner tubes float down any given stretch of this river. The recreational boating has taken off tremendously. But that's partially, or at least I like to think partially due to the structures we've put in, making it more floatable in low flow because we've narrowed the river up, making the center channel deeper so you can float more than you have to drag your boat.
Making the Little Cole better for boating was actually a side effect. The primary reason for the stream restoration work was to reduce erosion and clean out the excess sediment from the bottom.
Prior to putting the structures in, the sediment was choking most of the river. The riverbed was a lot of sand, as opposed to today we've got a lot more cobble showing up in the bottom. The small rocks make better habitat for the bugs, which feed the fish, which make better habitat all the way around.
And what a difference it's made.
Oh, here we go. Did I see mayflower?
Mayfly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See mayflies.
There we go. Oh, that is such good news.
Basically, it's a watershed approach, whereas we've started on the upper end, we've worked our way down through the bigger sections of river and making more homes for the bugs, the small bugs in the cobble, makes more food for the fish, and it's a domino effect up the food chain.
During the construction phase, it was pretty hard to miss the work going on in the watershed. Lots of heavy machinery moving lots of trees and heavy rocks. But if you think they were randomly placed, you'd be wrong.
It's tough for the contractors. I mean, these are 2 to 3 ton boulders, sometimes bigger, and we're having them place them at an elevation that's very specific and not giving them much room for air. We had to adjust some things along the river, structure-wise, elevation-wise, but we only gave the contractor 3/10 of a foot of air on the structures.
It's as much art as it is science sometimes. The science tells us what sections of river need it the most, what types of river bends need what types of structure, but the art is being able to place them there so that they work. You get the best bang for your buck out of them, and they don't look like something that's very obtrusive in the river. That it's not like you're putting a concrete retaining wall there to protect that bank, but you've got natural stone that is put there, and it just blends into parts of nature.
It's a technique known as natural stream design, and to the casual observer, all these structural elements are hard to spot.
That's the intent. This is a natural stream restoration project, and the idea is to make the river do the work. We really don't want to see the structures bulging out. What we want to see is the results from the structures. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with what we saw in the river today. The river responds so well to the structures. We saw a lot of the benefits early on, and they've just held up. All the structures are still in place and they're still doing their job.
And what the designers learned on the Little Cole is being applied to other stream restoration projects around the state.
It was actually early on realized as a proving ground for stream restoration in southern West Virginia. The Little Cole River is actually a fairly large river for this kind of structures. It's not the size of the Kanawha or the Elk, but it's bigger than some of the natural reproducing trout streams up north, where we're using boulders that are half the size of a car hood in a large river that sees huge flows. And we've got studies that prove that these things are working. They're moving the sediment out, uncovering that cobble. So that's what we wanted. We didn't want something we had to come back every 5 years and replace rocks or dig scour pools out. We wanted something that we could build once and let it go. And it's worked tremendously. If you're looking for a great place to come out and float, the Cole River is one of my favorite places. With the proximity to Charleston and southern West Virginia, it's just really shows what you can do with a river if you give it some attention.
In Boone County, I'm Mike Huff for Environment Matters.
You can find out more information about recreational opportunities in the Cole River watershed by visiting coleriverwatertrail.org. The group even has a smartphone app you can download from their website. When you think recycling, what comes to mind? Paper, plastic, aluminum cans? Well, now, thanks to a program operated by Habitat for Humanity, you can now recycle your unused latex paint. Habitat for Humanity can take your old paint, sort it, strain it, mix it, and repackage it for sale in their restores back to consumers for a fraction of the retail cost. Proceeds from the sale go back into the Habitat's mission of building affordable homes for families around the region. The DEP is having its annual paint drive here at our headquarters in Charleston on October 29th, but you can drop off your unused latex paint at either the Charleston or Huntington Habitat for Humanity Restore locations anytime. Finally, if you weren't directly in the path of totality of the recent solar eclipse, the sky might not have darkened quite as much as you'd expected. Here in Charleston, peak coverage was about 89%, and while it might not have been obvious to you, it was to our rooftop solar array. Check out this screenshot from the output from August 21st. You can see on the graph, pretty standard for a sunny summer day, except for that big dip in the middle of the afternoon where the light output from the sun dropped from the usual midday intensity to more of an early morning or early evening level. Pretty cool science, huh? We leave you now back along the Little Coal River in Boone County. On behalf of all of us here at the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
More than 800 people with one mission, promoting a healthy environment. We are the West Virginia Department of Environmental Protection.